going on YouTube? Thanks for tuning into the channel. Your boy Devin Coates, day 46, 48 days with the 48 laws of power. Link in the description where you can pick up your copy today. Law 46, never appear too perfect. This is actually a law I really like. I think it's very, very important, especially for younger people in our day and age, because there's so much of this social media flaunting, and a lot of people are going to succumb to this law right here. To the judgment, appearing better than others is always dangerous, but most dangerous of all is to appear to have no faults or weaknesses. Envy creates silent enemies. It is smart to occasionally display defects and admit to harmless vices in order to deflect envy and appear more human and approachable. Only gods and the dead can seem perfect with impunity. So, first story is about Joe Orton and Kenneth Hallowell. London, they're first met up in the 1950s, and I think they were homosexual lovers. So they're two men. I just wanted to say that just in terms of Joe and Kenneth. Yeah, they are dudes. So this is around when they were 25 and 53, and both of them were trying to be actors. They weren't really cut out to be actors, so they reached a point where they kind of gave up on that, and Orton actually was Orton wasn't the one. No, Hallowell had an inheritance, and that's actually how they funded their first venture when they were living together. So at one point they did something where Hallowell went to jail, and then Orton left, and he kind of left his friend or lover or whatever. I think they kind of played both, but he went to start writing on his own. So they started to become writers because they couldn't be actors. So while he was writing, eventually, just long story short, about 10 years after 53, Orton actually started to become pretty successful. In the beginning, Hallowell was kind of the person that was doing most of the work, and Orton was just kind of throwing some things in, and he was kind of getting helped by Hallowell. But then Orton, the roles kind of switched once Hallowell went to jail for like 6 months. It wasn't a long time. And basically Orton becomes very successful. Play after play after play after play. He is basically becoming very successful when they throw parties, and Hallowell is becoming very envious of him. So you can imagine they're in a household where they're together, but there is a tension, because now from the beginning, when Hallowell was actually supporting him through his inheritance and supporting them, Orton is now supporting Hallowell, and Orton is very successful and he's doing great things. And then Hallowell, he is showing up to these same parties, but he's kind of in the background. And then there's also Orton was a little bit more outgoing, it seemed, and Hallowell a little more reserved and awkward and defensive. And this kind of led to even a more polarizing of the same experience. And basically, at one point, Orton, he kind of feels bad for him. Well, he feels bad for Hallowell, and he tries to help him start a artist career and start launching gallery shows. Hallowell fails, which actually just kind of doubled the effect, because it's like, dude, you trying to help you out, and now you just fail, and now he's even more envious. And I think they actually went to a brief trip where they sat talking about how they're all happy together and da-da-da-da-da to Morocco, and both of the men were kind of like, both of them were like, kind of talking about where they're happy. And this kind of confused me, because I'm like, this guy was like clearly not happy, so I don't know how he was perceiving him to be happy when he wasn't. But at one point, they come back, and outwardly, I guess Hallowell isn't really making it super clear, besides some sudden outbursts that you'll hear in a second. And at one point, Orton does another play that actually would become his biggest masterpiece, and then Hallowell actually bludgeons him to death. And then Hallowell, he takes a bunch of sleeping pills, like 21 sleeping pills, and kills himself. And he leaves a note that says, "If you read Orton's diary, all will be explained." And basically, Orton's diary kind of explains the time when both of the men were kind of equal. And then he does also explain how things started to switch and the envy that Howell had towards him, towards Orton. And basically, this Howell read it, and he wasn't supposed to read it, but he talked about parties where he would like blurt out certain things and how this envy grew. And the only way Howell felt like he could escape was basically bludgeoning him to death and killing him. So this is definitely an example of where envy kind of led to the demise of Orton, and he really wasn't able to downplay that. So then the other one is with Medici, and there's this other Albizzi is the other, or Albizi's is the other family. So the Medicis became a very prominent banking family. The Albizi's were already a very established family. So the Medicis, through their whole rise, he kind of kept Cosimo is the one that is the guy that's actually running it. But basically, he really always dampened himself. Albizzi was very outward, and until he got so big that it couldn't be ignored, he really didn't highlight Medici. He didn't highlight his ability, but Albizzi always highlighted his. Once he got big enough, Albizzi basically did some kind of maneuver that got Cosimo basically exiled in some kind of way where he had to leave. And he kind of left quietly, kept a low profile. Obviously kept building up his brand, and then eventually people felt like he had a little bit too much power because he wasn't even in office. So they felt like he was like kind of a dictator because he's just controlling money. And since he controlled all the money, and he's actually executed. So Medici comes back and he realizes two things. Number one, I don't want to fall in the same trap Albizzi did, so I don't want to build myself up too much. But two, if I keep too low of a profile, somebody like Albizzi, the way that he conspired to push me out, that could happen again. So what he did was he basically bought a lot of influence from the middle class, but he still kept his low profile. So he had a lot of partners in the kind of common people above, a little bit above common people level, but he also didn't flaunt himself. Even when he died, they wanted to have a big procession. He said, "I don't want any pomp or demonstration for my death," because he kind of understood that envy is not something that you want. And he had a quote. Let me see if I could see it. He said something about, this is what he said. One of Cosimo's favorite expressions was, "Envy is a weed that should not be watered." So he knew that he didn't want to water the weeds of envy and build envy. Machiavelli actually later, after his death, praised him as one of the greatest people of understanding this, that, you know, envy is something that you don't want to have towards you. And in the keys to power, the real big thing is that you want to nip it in the bud. Once envy is given on you, and then I'll go into the reversal, there's not much you can do. So you need to kind of stop it. Humans do not want to feel inferior, and if you make other people feel inferior, that is something that's going to come back to bite you, especially in places where there's this veneer of equality. So if you guys are colleagues in a work position, you guys have the same position, if you guys grew up together or things like that, you don't want to make other people feel inferior in that way. It's a very ugly emotion. It's also an emotion, Plutarch says, of all the disorders of the world, envy is the only one no one confesses to, because nobody wants to admit that they feel this way, that they feel inferior to you and want your success. And there's two types of people he talks about that can have this. So the one is the very obvious one, the one everybody knows. The guy that whenever something fucking great happens, "Oh yeah, I'm great," or girl, whatever. "Oh yeah, I got this. I did this. I got a promotion. I did this." And like, that person is the guy who automatically gets the envy. Everybody knows him. But the other person is the one that is naturally gifted. That at the beginning, it's almost like they don't really know how great they are. So it's important to notice that, if you have talent, and it's even worse because, if you're rich or something, or maybe even have a big, great body, like that's something that can be gained. That's something that can be done. But like being smart, that's something that you're fucking born with. That's nothing that anybody else can do. So that would even stir an even uglier emotion, or being good looking. Like there's nothing you can really do to change that. So those are the two people, and those are the two things that, I mean, if you're either one, you want to make sure and kind of keep that under par. You want to see the certain glances. Excessive praise is also often a sign of envy. Excessive criticism is also often a sign of envy. So, and then also, just as in the Orton Hollowell, you if somebody's envious of you, don't try to do them favors, because it's going to look condescending. Because that's how Orton's display to his partner seemed, because it was like, he gives, he did it out of guilt and pity, because he felt he was getting envious, and he felt like he needed to bring him up to his stature. So basically, that's the whole idea, is you don't want to make other people feel inferior. It's a very ugly emotion, and no human wants to feel inferior. In the reversal, I thought there was actually something very interesting. So the first part is that you want to nip it in the bud, and you don't want to get the envy. But once you get the envy, Robert Greene actually advises to do the exact opposite. At that point, once envy's there, whether it was your fault or not, you should take the other approach. Just completely disdain all the envy is. So it's like that law back in like the 20s, disdain what you can't have. If you can't have their approval, completely disdain them, and then actually double down. Make them super envious. Become so great. Don't try to hide anything, because it's like that saying that the best revenge is massive success. So if they're coming out the woodworks, just destroy them by being super great. Don't go back and forth mudslinging. Just show how great you are, and make them have to wallop in their envy even more, especially if you're in an unimpeachable position, because at that point, there's nothing they can do. If you just be great, they just have to accept it, and there's nothing that they can do. But in the end, in the beginning, you kind of want to try to show the faults. Try not to have to battle that battle, because it's going to cause you stress. But once you're there, just go down with it. Don't have a weak ego. Be very strong and prominent in just building the envy, because disdain them. There's nothing you can do to please them. So just be great. And it'd be almost like you're doing that condescending thing. Anything you do to kind of appease them is going to be condescending to them. So that's it for this one. I think I only have two more, 47 and 48. We're almost getting there. It's your boy Devin Coates. Like, comment, subscribe. Pick up your copy in the link in the description below. Until next time, peace out.